I think I didn't do anything wrong, just followed my heart, even if it meant leaving my husband at the altar to chase after someone I thought I still loved. Now I'm sitting here with divorce papers in my hand and everyone blaming me. But honestly, I don't see why I'm the villain. Isn't it better to be true to yourself than live a lie? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Aurelia Vane, and 6 months ago, I made what everyone calls the worst decision of my life. But was it really? I was standing at the altar in St. Luke's Church, wearing a dress that cost more than my car, looking into the eyes of Matthew Dorsey, my husband of 3 years, father to my 6-year-old daughter Sophie, and all I could think about was Dean Halbrook sitting in the 3rd row. Dean, my college boyfriend, the one who got away, the one who made me feel alive in ways Matt never could. When I sent him that wedding invitation, I told myself it was just closure. When he RSVP'd, yes, my heart did something it hadn't done in years. It raced. Matt squeezed my hand at the altar, his familiar smile spreading across his face. He's a good man, I'll give him that. Software engineer, steady income, devoted father. But good isn't the same as exciting, is it? Good doesn't make your pulse quicken when he walks into a room. Good doesn't make you feel like you're truly living. Do you, Aurelia Marie Vane, take Matthew James Dorsey to be your lawfully wedded husband? The words hung in the air like smoke. I could feel everyone watching. Matt's father Frank in the front row, beaming with pride. My mother Helen dabbing her eyes with a tissue. My sister Liz holding her breath. And there was Dean, leaning forward slightly, his dark eyes locked on mine. That's when I knew I couldn't do it. No, I whispered. The church fell silent. Matt's face went white. No, I said louder, pulling my hands away from his. I'm sorry, I can't do this. I ran. Right down that aisle, past the shocked faces of our families and friends, past the flowers and the photographer, and the life I was supposed to want. I ran because sometimes the heart wants what it wants, and mine wanted Dean Halbrook. The Uber driver didn't ask questions when I climbed into his car, still wearing my wedding dress, mascara streaming down my cheeks. I gave him Dean's address, the same apartment complex where he'd lived since college, because Dean never was one for change. My phone buzzed incessantly. Matt, my mother, Liz, even Matt's sister Carla, probably calling to tell me exactly what she thought of me. I turned it off. I needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out what came next. Dean answered his door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair messy like he'd been napping. His eyes widened when he saw me. Aurelia? What the hell? Weren't you supposed to be getting married today? I couldn't go through with it, I said, pushing past him into the familiar chaos of his living room. Pizza boxes on the coffee table, video game controllers scattered on the couch. It was so different from the pristine suburban home I shared with Matt, where everything had its place, and Sophie's toys were always organized in labeled bins. I kept thinking about you during the ceremony, I continued, turning to face him. About us. About what we had. Dean ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. Aurelia, that was over 10 years ago. You have a kid. You have a life. A life that's been suffocating me, I said. Matt doesn't understand me, Dean. He never has. He thinks providing for us and being reliable is enough, but there's no passion, no fire. I've been dying inside. I moved closer to him, remembering how it felt to be 22 and reckless and in love with Dean Halbrook. He'd been the bad boy then, the one who rode a motorcycle and wrote poetry and made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. I left him for you, I whispered. I left everything for you. But Dean stepped back, shaking his head. I never asked you to do that. Jesus, Aurelia, you just humiliated that man in front of everyone you know. This is insane. It's not insane, it's honest, I shot back. I'm finally being honest about what I want. Dean's phone started ringing. Then mine, even though I'd turned it off. The vibration was so violent it was buzzing against the coffee table where I'd set it. The reality of what I'd done was starting to sink in, but I pushed it away. I was with Dean now. That's all that mattered. "Look," Dean said carefully, "you can stay here tonight, but whatever you think this is, I'm not ready for this kind of drama." Drama. As if following your heart was drama. I spent that first night on Dean's couch, still in my wedding dress because I hadn't thought to pack anything else. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Matt's face at the altar, the confusion, the hurt, the humiliation. But I pushed those images away. Matt would be fine. He was always fine. He'd bounce back, probably find some nice, boring woman who'd be perfectly content with his steady, predictable love. The next morning, I finally turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls, dozens of text messages. From Matt. "How could you do this to us?" To Sophie. From my mother. "Honey, please call me. We need to talk." From Liz. "What the hell were you thinking?" From Carla. "You're a selfish bitch and I hope you're happy." I deleted most of them without reading. They didn't understand. None of them understood what it was like to feel trapped in a life that looked perfect from the outside, but felt like a prison on the inside. I sent a group text to my family. "I'm safe. I need time to think." Matt was suffocating me, and I couldn't pretend anymore. Please respect my space. Then I called in sick to work and spent the day at Dean's apartment, trying to recapture what we'd once had. But something was different. Dean was distant, distracted. He kept checking his phone and glancing at the door like he expected someone to burst in and arrest him for harboring a runaway bride. "This isn't how I imagined it would be," I admitted that evening as we sat on his couch, a awkward space between us. "What did you imagine?" he asked. I thought you'd be happy. I thought you'd want this." Dean was quiet for a long moment. "Aurelia, what we had was a long time ago. We were kids. I'm not the same person I was then, and neither are you." "I am," I insisted. "I'm exactly the same person. I just got lost for a while, playing house with Matt, trying to be someone I'm not." But even as I said it, I could feel the truth slipping away from me like sand through my fingers. Dean wasn't looking at me the way he used to. He wasn't pulling me close and telling me we'd figure it out together. He was looking at me like I was a problem he needed to solve. "I think you should go home," he said finally. "Talk to your husband. Work this out." "He's not my husband," I snapped. "I never said yes, remember?" "But you were married to him before today, right? You lived together, raised a kid together. That has to count for something." I stared at him, feeling something cold settle in my chest. "Are you kicking me out?" "I'm just saying this is more complicated than you're making it out to be. You have responsibilities. A daughter who's probably wondering where her mom is." Sophie. I hadn't let myself think about Sophie, about how she'd react when she found out Mommy had run away from Daddy at their wedding. But she'd understand eventually. When she was older, she'd understand that sometimes you have to choose between being happy and being safe. "Fine," I said, standing up. "I'll go. But don't think this is over, Dean. What we have is real, even if you're too scared to admit it." I called another Uber, this time to take me home. To the house I shared with Matt, where my clothes were, where my life was supposed to be. I'd figure out what came next from there. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but Matt's car was there. I sat in the Uber for a moment, gathering my courage. The driver cleared his throat. "This is it, right? 1247 Maple Street?" "Yes, sorry." I handed him a 20 and got out, my wedding dress rustling in the quiet suburban night. I used my key, but the door only opened a few inches before catching on the chain lock. Matt had never used the chain lock before. "Matt," I called through the crack. "It's me." I heard footsteps, then the chain sliding free. The door opened to reveal Matt standing there in his pajamas, his hair disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he'd been crying. which was jarring because I'd never seen Matt cry. Not when his mother died, not when he lost his job 3 years ago, not even when Sophie had to go to the ER with a broken arm. "Where's Sophie?" I asked, stepping inside. "At my dad's," he said quietly. I didn't know how to explain this to her. The house felt different somehow, colder. The wedding gifts were still stacked on the dining room table, boxes wrapped in silver paper that would now have to be returned. The flowers I'd arranged that morning were wilting in their vases. "Matt, don't," he said, holding up a hand. "Just don't. Not tonight." He walked toward the stairs, then stopped. "You can sleep in the guest room. We'll talk tomorrow when I can think straight." I wanted to follow him, to explain, to make him understand. But something in his voice stopped me. I'd never heard Matt sound like that before, hollow, defeated. It made me feel guilty. But that was ridiculous. I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd been honest. I'd chosen love over convenience. I spent the night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. This was supposed to be my wedding night. I was supposed to be in Maui right now, on the honeymoon Matt had planned, walking on the beach and drinking Mai Tais and pretending to be happy. Instead, I was alone in a room that smelled like the lavender sachets my mother had made, wondering why following my heart felt so much like falling. The next morning, I woke to the sound of voices downstairs. Matt was talking to someone, his father from the sound of it, and Sophie. I threw on a robe and hurried downstairs. Sophie was sitting at the kitchen table, eating cereal and swinging her legs. When she saw me, her face lit up. "Mommy, Grandpa Frank said you weren't feeling good yesterday. Are you better now?" I glanced at Matt, who was leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. His father Frank sat across from Sophie, his expression carefully neutral. Frank had never particularly liked me. He thought Matt could do better, thought I was too flighty, too selfish. Looking at him now, I could see the disappointment in his eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I told Sophie, kissing the top of her head. "How was your sleepover with Grandpa?" "Fun. We watched movies and ate ice cream for dinner, but Daddy seemed sad when he picked me up. And why didn't you come to get me?" "Mommy and Daddy need to have some grown-up conversations," Matt said before I could answer. "Why don't you go get dressed for school?" After Sophie bounded upstairs, Frank stood up and fixed me with a hard stare. "I don't know what's going on with you, Aurelia, but that little girl doesn't deserve to be caught in the middle of it." "She's not." "She is," Frank interrupted. "She's 6 years old and she knows something's wrong. Yesterday was supposed to be a celebration, and instead, she watched her mother run out of a church like the building was on fire." "Frank," Matt started. "No, son. Someone needs to say it." Frank grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. "I've watched you bend over backwards for this woman for 3 years. I've watched you try to make her happy, try to give her everything she wants, and this is how she repays you." He headed for the door, then turned back to me. "I don't know what you're going through, but you need to figure it out fast. Because that little girl upstairs loves you, and she doesn't understand why her world just got turned upside down." After Frank left, Matt and I sat in silence. I could hear Sophie moving around upstairs, getting ready for school like it was any other day. "We need to talk," Matt said finally. "I know, I want to explain." "There's nothing to explain," he said. "You made your choice pretty clear yesterday." "It's not that simple, Matt. I've been unhappy for a long time. I felt like I was suffocating, like I was losing myself." "So you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone we know." "I didn't mean for it to happen like that. I saw Dean in the church and I realized I was making a mistake." Matt's jaw tightened. "Dean Halbrook, your college boyfriend?" "Yes." "The one you invited to our wedding?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I thought it would give me closure. And did it? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. Yesterday, running to Dean had felt like the most natural thing in the world. But sitting here now, looking at Matt's tired face, I felt confused. "I need to know if you want to try to work this out," Matt said. Because I can't live like this. Sophie can't live like this. I don't know, I said honestly. I need time to think. How much time? I don't know that either. Matt nodded slowly like he'd expected that answer. Then I think you should stay somewhere else while you figure it out. This is too confusing for Sophie. This is my house too, I said, feeling defensive. I'm not kicking you out. I'm asking you to think about what's best for our daughter. Our daughter. Not my daughter, our daughter. Even now, even after what I'd done, Matt was trying to be fair. Fine, I said. I'll stay with my mother for a while. Good. I'll pack some things for you. As Matt headed upstairs, I heard Sophie's voice calling for me. I found her in her room, struggling with the buttons on her school uniform. Help me, Mummy? I knelt down and buttoned her shirt, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. She was so innocent, so trusting. She had no idea that her parents' marriage was falling apart, that her mother had run away from her own wedding like a teenager. Mummy, are you and Daddy fighting? She asked quietly. Why would you think that? Because you slept in the guest room, and Daddy looked sad, and Grandpa Frank was talking in his angry voice. I finished with her buttons and looked into her eyes, Matt's eyes, serious and thoughtful. Sometimes grown-ups have problems they need to work out, I said. But no matter what happens, Daddy and I both love you very much. Are you getting divorced like Emma's parents? The question hit me like a slap. I don't know, sweetheart. I hope not. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. Did I hope not? Or was I just saying what I thought I should say? My mother's house smelled like vanilla candles and disappointment. Helen Vane had been planning my wedding for months, coordinating with caterers and florists, and the church ladies who would serve cake after the ceremony. She'd bought a new dress, gotten her hair done, invited all her friends from the book club, and I'd ruined it all. I just don't understand, she said for the 5th time as we sat in her kitchen, drinking coffee from the good china she only used for special occasions. Matt is such a wonderful man. He adores you. He's a good father to Sophie. He provides for you both. Providing isn't everything, Mum. There has to be passion, connection. I felt like I was dying inside. Passion, she repeated, like it was a foreign word. Honey, passion fades. What matters is partnership, commitment, building a life together. Is that what you had with Dad? My mother's face tightened. My father had left when I was 12, run off with his secretary like a cliché from a bad movie. Mom had raised Liz and me alone, working 2 jobs and never complaining. Your father was passionate, she said quietly. Look how that turned out. I stayed at my mother's house for a week, sleeping in my old bedroom with its faded pink wallpaper and participation trophies from high school track. Every day I told myself I was taking time to think, to figure out what I really wanted. But mostly, I was texting Dean. He wasn't responding the way I'd hoped. His messages were short, distant. When I suggested we meet for coffee, he said he was busy with work. When I asked if he'd been thinking about me, he said it was complicated. Meanwhile, the gossip mill was churning. I could see it in the way the cashier at the grocery store looked at me, the way conversation stopped when I walked into the post office. Suburbia thrives on drama, and I'd given them the story of the year. I decided to get ahead of it at work. I'd been out for a week, using sick days, but I couldn't hide forever. When I walked into the insurance office on Monday morning, I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Aurelia, my coworker Jessica, rushed over, her eyes bright with curiosity, disguised as concern. How are you doing? We heard. I'm fine, I said, settling at my desk and turning on my computer. Just working through some personal issues. But Jessica wasn't going to be dismissed that easily. It must have been so hard realizing you couldn't go through with it. I mean, to get all the way to the altar and then realize you were making a mistake. I looked up at her, seeing an opportunity. Jessica was the office gossip. Whatever I told her would be all over town by lunch. It wasn't easy, I said, lowering my voice, but I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. Matt, Well, he's not the man I thought he was. What do you mean? I glanced around, making sure no one else was listening, then leaned closer to Jessica. He's very controlling. I felt like I couldn't breathe, couldn't be myself. And he has this temper. Matt Dorsey has a temper. Jessica looked shocked. He always seemed so mild-mannered. That's what he wants people to think, but behind closed doors. I let the implication hang in the air. It was a lie, of course. Matt had never raised his voice to me, never tried to control what I did or where I went. If anything, he'd been too accommodating, too willing to let me have my way. But I needed people to understand why I'd left. I needed them to see that I wasn't the villain in this story. "Oh my God," Jessica breathed. "I had no idea. You're so brave for getting out." I just couldn't take it anymore, especially with Sophie watching. I didn't want her to think that's what love looks like. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but I pushed down the guilt. This was survival. I had to protect myself, my reputation. I had to make people understand. By the end of the week, my version of events was making the rounds. I could see it in the sympathetic looks from the other women in the office, the way they rallied around me during lunch breaks. Finally, people were seeing my side of the story. But then, Liz showed up at my mother's house on Friday night, and I could tell from her expression that she wasn't buying it. "We need to talk," she said, brushing past me into the living room. My sister had always been the sensible one, the one who thought things through before acting. She'd married her college boyfriend right after graduation, had 2 kids, lived in a tidy house with a white picket fence, everything I'd been trying to escape. "I've been hearing some interesting stories around town," she said, settling onto the couch, "about Matt being controlling and having a temper." "It's true," I said, but I couldn't meet her eyes. "Bullshit, Aurelia. I've known Matt for 3 years. I've watched him with you, with Sophie. He's one of the gentlest men I've ever met. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors." "Yes, I do, because you've never been able to keep your mouth shut about anything. If Matt was controlling or abusive, you would have been complaining about it for years. Instead, your biggest complaint was that he was boring." I felt my carefully constructed narrative crumbling. "Liz, no, listen to me. I supported you when you married him, even though I thought you were settling. I supported you when you complained that he wasn't romantic enough or spontaneous enough. But I cannot support you destroying that man's reputation because you're too much of a coward to admit you screwed up." "I didn't screw up," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. I followed my heart. "You humiliated him in front of everyone he cares about. You abandoned your daughter, and now you're spreading lies about him to make yourself feel better." "They're not lies. They are lies, and we both know it. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" After Liz left, I sat in my childhood bedroom staring at my phone. Dean still hadn't responded to my last 3 messages. Matt hadn't contacted me at all since I'd moved out, though my mother said he called every few days to check on me. I pulled up his number and started typing. "Can we talk?" Then I deleted it. I wasn't ready to face Matt yet, wasn't ready to see the hurt in his eyes, or answer his questions about Dean. I needed more time to figure out what I wanted, what story I was going to tell. But time, I was beginning to realize, wasn't on my side. The legal papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who made me sign for them like they were a birthday present. Petition for legal separation. Petition for custody. The words blurred together as I read, but the meaning was clear. Matt was done waiting for me to figure out what I wanted. "He can't do this," I told my mother, waving the papers in the air. "Sophie is my daughter too." "He's asking for primary custody, not sole custody," Mom said, reading over my shoulder. "You'd still see her on weekends." "Weekends? I'm her mother." But even as I said it, I realized I hadn't seen Sophie in 2 weeks. Matt had offered to bring her by, but I'd been busy, meeting with Dean, when he finally agreed to see me, looking for a new apartment, dealing with the gossip at work. There had always been an excuse. I called Matt's number, but it went straight to voicemail. His voice sounded professional, distant. "You've reached Matt Dorsey. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible." "Matt, it's me. We need to talk about these papers. You can't just take Sophie away from me. Call me back." He didn't call back. Instead, I got a call from a lawyer named Patricia Hendricks, who spoke in crisp, no-nonsense sentences. "Ms. Vane, I represent Matthew Dorsey in his separation proceedings. He's asked me to handle all communication going forward." "He won't talk to me?" "My client feels it's best to keep things professional at this point. Now, regarding the custody arrangement, we're prepared to offer generous visitation." "Visitation? She's my daughter, not a pet." "Ms. Vane, I understand you're upset, but let's focus on what's best for Sophie. She needs stability right now, and frankly, your recent behavior has been erratic." Erratic. The word stung because it felt true. Running from the wedding, staying with Dean, moving in with my mother, spreading stories about Matt, none of it looked good from the outside. "I want to see Sophie," I said. "Today. I'll speak with my client and get back to you." The permission came with conditions. I could see Sophie for 2 hours at a neutral location, the park near our house, with Matt present. Like I was a flight risk, like I might kidnap my own daughter. Sophie seemed smaller somehow when I saw her, more fragile. She ran to me and hugged me tight, and I felt something crack open in my chest. "I missed you, Mommy. Why haven't you been home?" "I've been staying with Grandma Helen," I said, glancing at Matt. He was sitting on a bench about 20 feet away, close enough to supervise, but far enough to give us privacy. "But I've missed you too, so much." We played on the swings and the slide, and for a few minutes it felt normal. But then Sophie asked the question I'd been dreading. "Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" I looked over at Matt, who was watching us with an expression I couldn't read. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. But that doesn't change how much we both love you." "Emma's parents got divorced and now she has 2 bedrooms and gets twice as many Christmas presents," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "But she says it's sad because they can't all watch movies together anymore." "Would that make you sad?" Sophie nodded, and I saw tears gathering in her eyes. "I want us to all live together like before. I want you to come home." I wanted to promise her that I would, that we'd figure it out, that everything would go back to normal. But looking at Matt's face, I knew it was too late for that. After I said goodbye to Sophie, Matt walked over to where I was standing by my car. "She's in therapy now," he said quietly. "She's been having nightmares, acting out at school. Her teacher says she's been telling the other kids that her mommy ran away." The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I didn't run away from her. I ran away from what, Aurelia? From me? From our life together? Because to a 6-year-old, that's the same thing. I wanted to explain, to make him understand that it wasn't about Sophie, that I loved her more than anything, but the words wouldn't come. "I want more time with her," I said instead. 2 hours isn't enough." "Then prove you're ready for it. Get your own place. Stop telling people I was abusive. Stop pretending you're the victim here." My face burned. "I never said you were abusive." Matt pulled out his phone and played a voicemail. It was Jessica from work, her voice syrupy with false concern. "Hi, Matt. This is Jessica from Aurelia's office. I just wanted you to know that we're all thinking of you during this difficult time. What Aurelia told us about your issues, well, it takes a lot of courage for a woman to leave that kind of situation. I hope you're getting the help you need." I felt sick. "Matt, There are 5 more messages like that," he said, putting his phone away. "From your co-workers, from people at Sophie's school, from neighbors. You've been busy." "I was just trying to explain. You were trying to destroy my reputation so you'd look better. Well, congratulations. Half the town thinks I'm an abuser, and the other half thinks you're a selfish narcissist who abandoned her family. Neither of us comes out looking good." He started to walk away, then turned back. "You want to know the really sad part? I would have worked with you. If you'd come to me and said you were unhappy, if you'd asked for counseling or a separation or even a divorce, I would have tried to make it as easy as possible. Because despite everything, I did love you. But you didn't just leave me, Aurelia. You tried to destroy me on your way out. That night, I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying the conversation. Matt was right. I had been spreading stories about him, painting him as the villain to make myself look better. But it wasn't malicious, was it? I was just trying to survive, trying to make people understand why I'd made the choices I'd made. My phone buzzed with a text from Dean. "Can't do this anymore. You need to stop contacting me. I'm sorry." I stared at the message, reading it over and over. This was it, the final nail in the coffin of my great romantic gesture. I'd given up everything for a man who didn't want me, destroyed my marriage for a fantasy that had never been real. But it was too late to take it back now. The damage was done, the papers were filed, the gossip was spreading. All I could do was try to minimize the fallout and hope that somehow I could salvage something from the wreckage of my life. I was about to find out just how much wreckage there really was. The mediation room smelled like stale coffee and quiet defeat. Matt sat across from me, steady and unreadable, while his lawyer, Patricia Hendricks, stacked files like ammunition. My lawyer, a tired public defender with a leaky pen, looked more nervous than I did. "Mr. Dorsey is requesting primary custody," the mediator said gently, "with supervised visitation for Ms. Vane." "Supervised?" I snapped. "I'm not a danger to my child." Patricia opened a file. "You abandoned your family at your own wedding, Ms. Vane. You've lied publicly, spread damaging claims, and your daughter's teacher reports she's been acting out, saying, 'Mommy doesn't love Daddy.'" Each word landed like a punch. When Patricia presented Dean's sworn statement confirming our affair, the same Dean I'd left everything for, I felt the air leave my body. Matt finally spoke. His voice was calm, tired. "I don't want revenge, Aurelia. I just want stability for Sophie. You've missed her milestones, her play, her birthday. You haven't asked how she's doing in weeks." The mediation ended with everything lost: custody, support, reputation. I sat in my car afterward, crying into my hands until my mother called. At her house, Liz was waiting too. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she demanded. "You didn't make mistakes, Aurelia. You made choices." I wanted to argue to defend myself, but I couldn't, because she was right. That night, in my childhood bedroom, I stared at my phone. Dean's number, disconnected, Matt's, pointless. I was truly alone for the first time. And for once, I didn't try to make myself the victim. For once, I admitted what I'd refused to before. I'd destroyed something good for a fantasy that was never real. 6 months later, I was living in a cramped studio above a pizza shop, working at a new insurance office because the gossip at my old one had made staying impossible. My savings were gone, my reputation in ruins, and my weekends belonged to supervised visits with Sophie that felt more like evaluations than time with my daughter. The final hearing was quiet and merciless. Matt sat beside his lawyer, calm and polished, while I stood there in my discount suit listening as the judge granted him primary custody and voided my right to spousal support. When I tried to speak, the judge cut me off. "Focus on doing the work, Ms. Vane." Afterward, Matt and I spoke briefly in the hallway. I apologized for lying, for humiliating him, for ruining everything. He listened but didn't comfort me. "You were chasing something that never existed," he said. "Figure out who you are before you try to be her mother again." That night, in my apartment that smelled like pepperoni and regret, I tried to write about what had happened. My first line read, "I followed my heart." I deleted it. Then I typed, "I destroyed my family for a fantasy." It wasn't redemption, but it was honest. Maybe that was the real beginning. Learning to stop justifying, to stop blaming, to live with the truth of who I'd been. I wasn't Mrs. Matthew Dorsey anymore. I was just Aurelia Vane, alone, humbled, and finally willing to face what I'd done. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.